The shocking downfall of Rick Harrison, from Pawn Star to Prison Monster, America demands answers. Let's be honest, when you think of Rick Harrison, your mind probably jumps to vintage Rolex watches, rare Civil War relics, and that iconic bald head bobbing behind the pawn shop counter with a chuckle. For over a decade, Rick was the trusted voice of reason in the world of antiques. He knew a guy for everything. He was the guy.
But now?
America's once beloved pawn king is in a prison jumpsuit, facing life behind bars, and everyone's asking the same question: what happened to Rick Harrison? This is not your average fall from grace. It's not just a celebrity who got caught in a scandal. This is the collapse of a cultural institution, a disturbing unraveling of a man who once brought joy to millions. So buckle up, because this isn't just about pawn shops, TV deals, or historical oddities. This is about secrets, lies, and the terrifying truth hiding in plain sight. Let's dive in. From pawn dreams to primetime stardom, Rick Harrison's rise was nothing short of inspirational. Born in 1965, diagnosed with epilepsy, and pulled from school at a young age, Rick turned what could have been a dead-end diagnosis into a launchpad. He devoured books, history, economics, negotiation, and by the time most kids were worried about gym class, Rick was hustling. By the early 2000s, he and his father, Old Man Harrison, had already built a respectable reputation in the world of pawnbroking. But in 2009, lightning struck. Pawn Stars premiered on the History Channel, and Rick went from local businessman to national celebrity. And let's be real, it was addictive. The haggling, the history lessons, the colorful cast of characters. Chumley, anyone? Families tuned in not just to see rare treasures, but to witness Rick's sharp wit and no-nonsense business sense. For many, he became a symbol of the American dream. Work hard, know your stuff, and success will follow. But what happens when the dream becomes a mask? Whispers in the shadows. While Rick basked in the spotlight, the whispers started. Quiet murmurs in the Vegas pawn world. Employees who'd suddenly quit. A hush-hush freezer room in Rick's sprawling estate. But nobody wanted to believe it. After all, Rick was the pawn star. Then came the audits. In 2023, what started as a routine IRS investigation into Rick's business expenses took a sinister turn. Financial discrepancies. Off-the-books purchases. Shell companies linked to European art dealers with shady reputations. But nothing could prepare investigators or the public for what came next. The storage unit that changed everything. When a Las Vegas storage unit connected to Rick Harrison was auctioned off due to unpaid rent, the buyer expected old antiques or maybe vintage comic books. Instead, they found nightmares. Dozens of sealed crates. The stench of decay. Inside, decomposing bodies, some posed, some preserved, alongside priceless Hollywood memorabilia and handwritten logs labeled personal acquisitions. Authorities were called. The FBI descended. And suddenly, the story everyone thought they knew was shattered. A house of horrors. Rick's mansion was raided within days. At first, agents found little. Then someone pressed the right panel on a library wall, and it creaked open like something out of a thriller. Behind it, a refrigerated chamber, lined with glass cases. Human remains dressed in historical attire. Jewelry. Makeup. Fake smiles painted onto faces. Was this some kind of grotesque museum? A morbid tribute to the past? Or something darker? Surveillance footage from Rick's security system made the answer clearer and infinitely more disturbing. The tapes that broke the internet. Leaked clips began surfacing online, reportedly pulled from the FBI's evidence log. In them, Rick can be seen alone in the chamber, speaking softly to the preserved corpses. One tape appears to show him dancing with a body in a flapper dress. Another shows him placing a crown on a mummified skull. The internet exploded. Reddit threads, TikTok theories, and Twitter wars ignited under hashtags like #PawnStarPredator and #DeathCollector. Fans were divided. Some cried fake, others scoured old episodes for clues. Had he always been like this? Were there signs we missed? One thing was certain: Rick Harrison was no longer just a TV star. He was the lead in a real-life horror story. Testimonies that shook the courtroom. During the trial, prosecutors painted a bone-chilling picture. Rick wasn't just trafficking in rare objects, he was trafficking in lives. Former employees testified that they were paid stay quiet bonuses. One said they'd once accidentally opened the freezer room door and been threatened into silence. Another said, "He told me history needed to be preserved, even if it meant preserving people." Financial records showed payments to unregistered suppliers and offshore transfers totaling millions. The logs found in the storage unit detailed bizarre acquisitions, including 1920s vaudeville girl, perfect condition, and jazz-age socialite, minor decay on left foot. Was a performance art gone wrong? Or the symptom of a twisted obsession? Fans turned foes. Once his biggest supporters, Rick's fanbase became a battleground. Some launched online petitions demanding his sentence be reduced due to mental illness. Others weren't having it. "He's not a collector. He's a predator," one former fan tweeted. "We invited him into our homes every week. We laughed with him. He played us all." The History Channel scrubbed all traces of Pawn Stars from its site. Syndication was pulled. Reruns were canceled. The empire crumbled in weeks. And yet, a cult following remained. Conspiracy theorists claimed the government was framing him, that he was close to revealing what really happened to Elvis, that the bodies were planted. But as more evidence surfaced, the truth was impossible to deny. The final sentence. Rick stood stone-faced in court. Gone was the slick businessman with the sarcastic quips. In his place, a man hollowed out by secrets. "You don't understand," he told the judge. "I was preserving history in my own way." The room fell silent. The judge didn't flinch. "You weren't preserving history. You were desecrating it." Rick was sentenced to life in prison without parole. The fallout and the questions we can't stop asking. How does a man who built an empire around preserving the past fall so catastrophically into darkness? Was it a descent into madness? A secret life long hidden? Or something more insidious? What really drove Rick Harrison to collect bodies as if they were collectibles? And how did we, as a society, miss it? Was the charm too strong? The brand too familiar? Or did we simply not want to believe that the guy we trusted with grandma's vintage ring was capable of such horror? A chilling legacy. Rick's downfall isn't just a crime story. It's a cautionary tale. It reminds us how easily charisma can mask darkness, how fame can become a shield for deviance, and how the line between admiration and obsession can blur dangerously. And perhaps most disturbingly, it reminds us how much we want to believe in people, even when the truth is staring us in the face. What happens next? With Rick behind bars, his empire in ruins, and America still reeling, one question remains. Will we ever know the full truth? Law enforcement officials say the investigation is ongoing. More storage units have been found, more logs recovered, more bodies identified. Meanwhile, fans and critics alike are left to grapple with what it all means. Was Rick Harrison a monster all along, or did something inside him break? Conclusion: the truth hurts, but it matters. The story of Rick Harrison isn't just about crime. It's about trust, illusion, and the danger of what hides behind the camera. So here's the deal. Question what you see. Dig deeper. Don't assume the smiling face on your screen is the whole story. And most of all, don't let your admiration blind you. Rick Harrison may have once preserved history, but in the end, he became the thing we'll never forget, and wish we could. If this story shocked you, moved you, or made you look at celebrity culture in a different light, share your thoughts. Share this article. Let's keep the conversation going. Because sometimes the most dangerous things are hidden in plain sight. Echoes from the fans, betrayal and confusion in the aftermath. As the news spread like wildfire, the emotional toll it took on Rick's fans was palpable. Social media turned into a digital therapy session. People who had grown up watching Pawn Stars with their families now felt betrayed, as if a beloved uncle had just turned out to be a serial killer. One mother shared on Facebook, "My son used to call Rick his TV grandpa. We watched every episode. Now I can't even look at the show's logo without feeling sick." Memes circulated, some mocking, others dark, and a few just painfully confused. One tweet that went viral read, "So, you're telling me the guy who haggled over a signed Babe Ruth baseball was also cataloging corpses like Pokemon cards?" This wasn't just tabloid fodder. It was emotional whiplash. Rick had cultivated a brand rooted in nostalgia, expertise, and trust. So when that illusion shattered, it did more than disturb. It disoriented. Was it all a performance? The rise of Rick's alternate reality. Some insiders argue that Rick had started slipping into character long before the investigation began. One former producer of Pawn Stars spoke anonymously and said Rick was obsessed with legacy. Not just his own, but with capturing moments in time, owning pieces of history that made him feel immortal. He would talk about history like it was his to control, the producer said. Like, he wasn't just telling stories, he was writing them himself. Was Rick always acting? Did he see himself as a gatekeeper of forgotten lives and stories? Or did the lines between television persona and private obsession blur until he couldn't tell the difference? This theory sparked new debates online. Was Rick a collector or a character gone rogue? Behind the freezer door, more discoveries emerge. As weeks passed, law enforcement began leaking additional and frankly terrifying discoveries from Rick's properties across Nevada and Arizona. In one location, investigators uncovered dozens of what appeared to be homemade documentaries, some filmed in grainy black and white, narrated by Rick himself as he explained the historical value of the deceased subjects in his collection. One tape allegedly featured a chilling monologue where Rick described a woman he called Evelyn, claiming she danced during the Great Depression in Chicago and deserved to be remembered forever. Police later confirmed the body was linked to a missing person report filed in 1989.